chemical scientist by profession, so has vast knowledge about water quality and has been in the industry doing aquaculture and poultry for more than 30 years. And also we selected our R&D director, Dr. Arnold, which some of you are familiar with, to put us through a very educative lecture. And of course, our daily interfacing with farmers, we've had a lot of series of questions that have been posted to us, which we've addressed, but we decided to bring it on today so that some of you that are having challenges with similar questions can have a direct answer, and will do justice to that, if not better than Mr. Larry Omoshina himself, a veteran in the industry and with a lot of followers on the platform. So I wish you all a successful deliberation. Please let us be attentive and be able to get one or two insights that you can use to improve our hatchlings and also to have a good bedrock foundation for our aquaculture business. We are not going to bore you with a lot of delay. We want to be precise, and we hope that at the end of the deliberation, we'll have one or two things to improve on our aquaculture business. Thank you all, and I wish you all a happy and educative listening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. So the next agenda for us is the Aqua products presentation, which will be done by Mr. Folusho Dada. So Mr. Folusho Dada, please, can you come on board and unmute yourself, please?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. I want to especially welcome all of us again to our first webinar here in Aqua, Nigeria. As the MD had earlier said, we would usually like to do this face-to-face, but with the COVID pandemic, this is what we have to do in order to be able to continue to engage with you, our customers. I will quickly run through some of our products and focus majorly on our discussion for today, which is our set of hatchery parks that we have here in Nigeria. A lot of us are very familiar with them, but I'll run through them again. We have two major types, the Ala Infa EX and then the Ala Futura EX. We have them in the popular that people know, 0.1 mm, 0.2 mm, and 0.4 mm. And then the Ala Futura is 0.5 mm, 0.9 mm, and of course 1.3 mm, which we use for our fingerling stage to the juveniles. Usually the 0.1 mm is advised to be used from day 3 of hatching after your fries have absorbed the yolk, and then you can move on to 0.2 mm 7 days after, and then of course 0.4 mm 14 days after. These three contain 64% crude protein and 8% fat. And then you can move on to Ala Futura EX, which is 0.5 mm. You would usually use that from day 21, and 0.9 mm, which you will use from around day 28. Both of them contain 60% crude protein and 15% fat. And then finally, for this range, we have the 1.3 mm, which contains 56% crude protein and 17% fat. All of them are in 6 kg buckets. A lot of the farmers they really enjoy our buckets. They use them for other things after utilization. But aside from those buckets, the feeds are packed in 1 kg, so that whether you be a small scale farmer or a large farmer, you have access to these products in their most fresh forms. Finally, it won't be out of place for me to run through our grow out products. We are very familiar with them, but I'll go through them once again. We have the 2 mm and 3 mm, which is the most popular in the market. Both of them are 45% crude protein and 12% fat. We have the 4.5 mm, which is 42% crude protein and 12% fat. 6 mm is about 40% crude protein, 12% fat, and 8 mm, which is the final grow out size, is 38% crude protein and 10% fat. All our feeds have benefits that are attached to them. We ensure that we utilize the best raw materials possible. We deliver high protein content to the market, which ensures that you have faster growth. Our feeds are highly digestible. which makes sure that most of the feed stays in the animal and then they can convert to flesh, while only minimal quantities goes into the water. And of course, we provide the best quality feed at the most affordable price. We have excellent feed conversion ratio. We'll be talking about a lot of them during the course of this session today. And of course, we ensure that we provide feed that allow your fish to grow healthily so that we can have quality life and quality human life. Thank you. I'll stop here now and then pick up in a later presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Folusho Dada. So we now go straight to the main discussion, which is introduced. So, Dr. Hanu, please, can you come on board and start presentation? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I will share my screen now. Good, the screen is shared. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here about our fry feeds to our clients and also colleagues and partners in Nigeria. Let me quickly have an overview about Aqua, where we are now. Many things happening over time. Aqua is a quickly growing company. And today we have 7 factories. 4 of them are in Europe, 2 are in Africa, one very big one in Egypt, and another one in Zambia. And then we have a factory also in China. We are supplying today more than 60 countries, and I can tell you there's almost every month a new country added, particularly in Africa and in Eastern Europe towards Asia. We are spreading very quickly due to our good feed quality and our variable program, where we have, for example, temperature adapted feeds, starter feeds, of course, which you are receiving from us. We have organic feeds also, and many functional feeds for special applications in fish farming. What we are talking about today, and what Dada already showed, is the fry feeds. And these are namely Ala-Infa EX, the granules, which are from 0.1 millimeter to 0.2 and 0.4, very lean products with high protein level. And then the bigger sizes are Ala Futura EX granules from 0.5 to 1 millimeter. And the biggest granule is 1.3 to 2 millimeter. And then there are also mini pellets in the size of 1.3 and 1.5 millimeter. Main difference is that they have a higher energy level due to the production. It's possible to coat higher fat levels onto these mini pellets than you would commonly find in our granules. Why is the fry feed so important? And here's a nice comparison I would like to show you. Imagine you have a fish fry from African catfish. Within 6 weeks, the growth of the fish is, the growth of the fish, if it was a human baby, it is like a small boy growing from 3 kilo to 400 kilo within 6 weeks. That's the growth in comparison that a catfish, an African catfish, is showing in the first 6 weeks of its lifespan. So you can imagine that a lot of nutrients are required, that the feed has to be custom made for these species, so that every function of the metabolism of these extremely fast growing animals compared to humans or compared to warm-blooded animals enables this very fast growth. And how that is tackled, I would like to show you with some examples from our feed. We have, for example, the optimal feed particle size. I will look into then the minerals required for development of skeleton, then that the fish can at all find the feed is very important. The feed also needs to show something like a natural behavior. I know it's an artificial product, but you can have some tricks that it seems for the fish like a natural food. needs to be highly digestible to allow fast growth, needs to be supplemented with vitamins and minerals. The nutrient distribution in the product needs to be very even so that every granule and every pellet contains the same proportions of nutrients. The nutrient availability also needs to be very even on the one hand, and it needs to be very high, because everything that goes inside the fish, as much as possible of that should also stay inside the fish. Then, due to extrusion technology, the product is hygienized due to the high temperature that is coming with the extrusion process. It's also allowing it to be water stable. And in the end, you have an optimal feed composition alike the natural food. So let's go into the examples here. The first one I would like to talk about is the optimal feed particle size. You know that the fry that is fed, right, that they are of different size. I mean, they are basically born on the same day, but they can be different in length or in weight. And that means if you have exactly the same particle size in the granules or in the pellets for all the fish, that won't work very well. You need to have an overlap between smaller sizes and the next biggest size, so that the small fish or the smaller siblings can also have the same access to the feed, because the fish is very selective. If, for example, they are facing a pellet or a granule which is too big, they will not try to eat it when they know that their mouth gap is simply too small to inhale the feed and to swallow it. They will leave it, and then there's nobody else or no other fish inside the tank that can make use of it, so you will have some feed waste. Therefore, it's important for the different sizes of the fish, even if they are born the same day, to have a little bit variation within the granule sizes. This I would like to symbolize here. So you have a little bit overlaps. If you say this is our smallest, 0.1, then it goes to 0.2 and 0.4. You will not only find, like it was in pellets, 0.1 and 0.2 and 0.4 and so on. You will find a bit an overlap, so that for the smaller fish, there's enough to eat. For the normal sized fish, no problem at all. And if there are already some bigger fish, they will also get away with some granules they like to eat, because fish tend always to go for the biggest granule they can find. They are as if they are lazy. They want to open their mouth and want to get the biggest chunk possible. And then instead of jumping to the next size, like here in the pellets, you have a small overlap so that you carry over the small fish also into the bigger granule size, to give every fish a chance to have enough nutrients. If you then look exactly how this would be for our granules, this is symbolized here. The percentage inside the granules, let's say we take our 0.1, 0.15 granules, approximately 40-45% of those are in the size range of 0.1, 0.15%. Then you have a couple of percentage bigger ones and a couple of percentage smaller ones. And that's the same in the next size and the same in the next. So it's a bit like waves moving into each other to ensure that the right pellet size is available to every fish. Then these small animals, as I showed, growing extremely fast, they need to be supplied with a high level of minerals. And they won't come only from the raw materials. We are also adding minerals into the feed, particularly for these small fish. You need a high phosphorus and calcium level because they are growing so quick. And the feed conversion ratio is so good that when you have a fish with a feed conversion ratio of 0.5%, that means you need to have enough phosphorus for this extremely fast growth and for this extremely good feed conversion, so that enough phosphorus is at the same time with the protein and the fat and the vitamins available to build these rather bony skeleton. In compared to other fish, African catfish is relatively bony. If you, for example, ever get to see a rainbow trout, which is a fish with very thin and few bones, and they have a huge head, huge fins, and a very strong vertebrae. It's a very robust fish, as you know. So they need a lot of phosphorus and calcium. So it's not only raw materials supplying it, it's also supplemented nutrition inside the diet. Otherwise, you might get crippled fish, and when they are once crippled, these small ones, that will never go away. Then the skeleton is damaged forever. So addition of minerals to feed is very important for the small life stages. Then how can you make the fish to find the feed at all? I mean, as you know, their eyes are not the best. So how they can smell feed is, of course, with their mouth, with their nose, and with their barbels. Yeah. So with these barbels, they are very accustomed to noticing feed and the direction the feed smell is coming from. So let's say we're adding small granules into the water, like here. And then you always have a certain water stream due to new water added into the tank, moving through the tank, where the fish gets a good orientation where the feed is to be found. So, but if you don't have feed that exudes these flavors, then you will have, of course, a very poor feed response. Excuse me. So by having this flavor inside the feed, you have a good response. And what is the fish doing then? It is moving into the direction of the product. No. Even if it cannot see it, it will smell it and go there by itself. But then you need certain raw materials that exude also this smell. It will not come by itself. You need to add that to the feed to make it extra palatable, extra interesting for the animal. And those are water-soluble attractants. So when it drops into the water, it dissolves very quickly. And then by the water stream, it is moved around in the tank so that the little fish can find it. Then another point, very important, the type-like natural behavior of feed. As I said earlier, of course, it is an artificial product. So it's nothing we cannot mimic live, of course. But what you might see sometimes is pellets or granules that are sinking like a stone, which is for a little fish with instincts to go after movement. It's not very attractive. No, they can either see that there's something moving, or they can feel it with their lateral line, that there's something moving through the water. So if you have pellets that are almost suspending in the water, standing there for a while because they have such a huge surface that they are sinking very slowly. No, there it comes. You see, for example, the granules with their huge surface. If there's a little water movement, they go up and they move around. And when there's many fish moving around, the granules are also moving up again and again. That's what makes it very attractive for the fish. So it shall not sink very quickly. It shall sink very slowly. And it should be mobile inside the water column. And then the fish has the idea by its instincts that this must be something very attractive to eat. And then it will hunt for it. So the semi-floating abilities, they enhance the feed detection. They make it possible for the fish to detect that something is moving around its head or its face. And by that, of course, you reduce a lot the feed waste. If it just sinks through like a stone and ends up on the bottom, it's not so attractive for a catfish anymore, like for any other fish. But then these feeds, once they're eaten, they need to provide is they need to be highly digestible to allow fast growth. As I said, in 6 weeks, it's like a human would grow from 3 kilo to 400 kilo. So basically, every minute counts. Every minute the fish can absorb nutrients counts, and the more it can absorb, the faster it will grow. Here's an example of 2 different granules. The fish is ingesting a very round granule with almost no surface, just a round one. And this one, he has a huge surface, due to the production process it has been made. So what's the benefit of that? Having these different surfaces of the granules. Once they are going into the stomach, then the hydrolysis starts inside the fish. So hydrochloric acid is added in the digestive process, that these granules start falling apart because the body wants to access the nutrients. But if the surface is of course bigger, then there's more surface for the hydrochloric acid inside the fish to attack and to dilute these granules. While the other one with a very smooth surface, it's very difficult then to hydrolyze it for the hydrochloric acid when there's no entrance point, or when there are not any of these splinters, so to say, to crack off. And therefore, the big surface granulate is already broken down into pieces and ready to enter the digestive tract, or here the gut of the fish, where the nutrients are absorbed. In the stomach, the granules are broken down, and in the gut, the nutrients are absorbed from the small particles here that came out after the hydrolysis process. So you see, they are already entering the gut, going through, while these are still in the hydrolysis process. And that's a matter of hours, giving this feed here a huge advantage, because the fish is then, when those are out of the stomach, ready to eat again. And once more, because once the stomach is empty, the brain of the fish is signaled, oh, I'm hungry, my stomach is empty. We know that ourselves, that feeling. And then they are ready to eat again. While here it would take them very long time to be ready to eat again and to feel hungry again, because the stomach is still full. And that's a matter of hours that you can save every day here by having a fast digestible product. So the processing, to have these very structured surface, gives huge advantages compared to a very smooth surface. Another point is pellets or granules which are lacking vitamins, or which are lacking additives that promote the fish health. It's relatively easy to add substances, nutrients to the feed, like high vitamin levels, that allow the fish to withstand diseases. Could be viruses, could be bacteria that are causing a disease inside the fish. So when you have them going after the fish, when there's no protection shield, when the nutrition of the fish is without the correct level of vitamins or even minerals or other substances, then it's very problematic for the fish, particularly under very high stocking densities, which can be a bit stressful, or if the environmental conditions are not optimal. Then the fish can suffer quickly from that. The feed does not supply it with this kind of protection shield. And then they will eventually die. I think we've all seen that here and there. It happens, particularly with low quality feed. What can be done about that? Of course, we need to supplement the feed, but we need also to know in which levels, which proportions, and how these vitamins, for example, how they can withstand the high temperatures inside the extruder. So it's not just by adding some vitamins, everything will be okay. You also need to know how resistant these vitamins are in the extrusion process, how long they will work, how long is the shelf life of these. And there are many different vitamins available on the market. There are also many different minerals available on the market. And you need to have an understanding about which are the most effective ones, which can work also after a long time. And by adding these to the fish, the right ones, there's basically some that you can find out by literature, but it's a lot of experience and trial and error to find the best ones, because the suppliers will always tell you that their vitamin is the best, but you can only find it out by doing the trials yourself. And then this protection shield is built up around the fish, which then, of course, keeps the bacteria and virus away. So feed supplemented with vitamins, minerals, and additives is able to strengthen the fish health. And those you will particularly find in our fry feeds, where we are adding it as our norm, because fry feeds, they need to have that. It's a must-have. Otherwise, it's not a good fry feed. So what you find from our standard product might be others are promising in their special feed, but for us, this is a must-have in fry feeds for sure. Then let's have a look at nutrient distribution. When raw materials are mixed and pellets are created, you need to have a good factory that can at all provide that. So different nutrients, different raw materials put into the mixer inside a huge factory. And I can tell you there are big differences if it's a huge factory with good machinery, expensive machinery on a good level, or if it's just some machinery put together to have something called an extrusion line. There are huge differences in that. That's also something you find out by experience over time, and also by not buying some cheap stuff. You need to have good machinery in order to make good products. So they are then mixed, but like you could do in a kitchen, of course. But the important part is that the pellets deriving from a production process, that they all contain the same proportions of nutrients. Yeah, that you have the same amount of protein, that you have the same amount of fat, the same amount of vitamins and minerals in all pellets. So you can put one pellet beside each other, they all contain the same. That you only can do by very good mixing inside the factory. So, and how is this achieved, that this homogeneity is possible? You need to have also a very good hammer mill, or even a micro milling inside the factory, depending on the product size that is required. And with this hammer mill, having the right particle sizes, ideally that all particles have the same size, because if you mix particles of different sizes, even if they are super small, 0.05 millimeter, if you mix them too long, they will separate again. So you will have the smallest ones on the bottom and the biggest ones on top, if it was in a column. So you also need to know how long you can mix them in order not to separate small milled raw materials again, yeah, before they enter the extrusion process. And this proper milling, when the surface is huge of a raw material, of an ingredient, a huge surface always means a big surface for digestion inside the fish gut. When the pellet is broken down, and then from these huge surface, nutrients can be released inside the fish body, allowing the animal to grow very fast. Important part is the proper hygienization done by the extrusion process, because it's 140 degrees. And that's also by law, that you need to have very high temperatures when you make animal feed, particularly when it's for export products with a longer shelf life, and when the storage conditions require also that you have a very, very low moisture content, low mold content, so you can keep then afterwards the feed for a long time. And because at 140 degrees, every virus, every bacteria that could possibly be inside the raw materials is also destroyed. So you get a sterilized product out of the extruder. Yeah, raw materials go in here, and then the pellets come out on that end. And this thermal treatment is very important, not only for hygienization, but what is also happening inside the extruder is the so-called gelatinization of the starch. When producing fish feed, you always need a certain amount of starch inside the fish feed, because that gives the backbone or the strength of the product, keeps it together. It's a bit like when baking a bread, that it's the flour and the starch in the flour that gives the bread a certain structure and keeps it together. Also, when you have a bread and just put it into water, it can take remarkably long until the bread starts falling apart, if at all. And maybe have a bread for a whole day laying in water and it has still this structure. Yeah, of course, when you start putting your finger in it, it might fall apart. But if you don't do it, it would just be swelling, getting bigger, absorb water, and that's it. But it would basically keep its the structure all the time. And that's the same also for pellets and for granules. So they need to have a good water stability. If they just fall apart, that's again not very interesting for the fish. They need to stay in shape, and then having the right size, that the water stability is functioning as long as needed, until then the fish is absorbing the pellet and starting to digest it inside its stomach. So there's also a little bit trade-off. You could make a super water stable pellet without any water added also, that can stay forever. But then it will be also difficult for the fish inside the stomach to hydrolyze it, to break it in pieces. So the water stability needs to function very well inside the water, but the huge surface of the granulate then allows the fish inside the stomach to break it in pieces. And therefore the extruder is absolutely required. You cannot make it with a pelletizer. You need an extruder to have a good starch gelatinization, to have a good water stability of feed granules. Finally, about this feed composition, where do we basically get our idea from how the feed should be composed? What should be the nutrients in it? What should be the level of fat, protein, minerals, and so on in it? What is attractive for the fish? The idea is to mirror the optimal feed composition, that it mirrors the natural food of the animal, so that you know what is required by the catfish, and that is the basic structure of the feed in terms of nutrients, so that it mirrors the content of protein, fat, amino acids, vitamins that the fish would also find in its natural food. The big difference is, of course, that the natural food contains a lot of water. So each time the fish is eating something, there's also a lot of water requiring space inside the stomach. Therefore, a dry feed, which does not require that much space because it's dry, can allow the fish to grow even faster than natural food. So putting all together, just about the tricks, making a good standard fry feed. You have the particle size, minerals, the search response as required, natural behavior of feed, high digestion rates, how all that is done, supplemented nutrition, nutrient distribution, nutrient availability, and so on. You see there's a lot of tricks, a lot of things to consider when making a good fry feed. And how do you develop those things, and where is it developed? I would like to show you briefly a bit about our trial station, Aqua Research, where we also carry out trials on African catfish. This is the trial station, how it looks from the top. We have approximately 80 tanks in there. Those tanks here are around 4 cubic meters. You can see how big a person is standing here in one of these 3 halls. There are people, so it's symbolized people. Of course, we don't have so many people running around there and standing. No, they're working and feeding the fish. But these tanks here, they are connected to an own filtration system, so it's completely recirculated. Those ones as well, they have their own filtration, and they need approximately 5% of fresh water every day to keep everything running. You have some kind of evaporation, a little bit of cleaning every day is required. Therefore, 5% of fresh water is normal during a day. So these different modules having their own filtration unit. And that allows us to have special conditions in these trial units here, be it, let's say, warm water, cold water, and then could also be that we do marine water trials with salt water. The African catfish, when we do trials with them, we put them into these big compartments here with 1 cubic meter. So we start with small fish of a few grams and then grow them to market size animals. And what are we looking into there is the taste of the product. Does the fish like it? What's the feed response? The digestibility, how good is the feed digested? How good are certain raw materials digested? Which raw material can be used in feed for African catfish? The growth of the fish compared with different recipes, but also compared to competitors' product, the health, and finally also the product quality of the African catfish. How does the meat look like? Is it reddish? Is it yellowish? Is the texture right? Is it very fatty or is it lean? And that is always a little bit tricky because there are different requirements depending on markets. Some countries, they like a very fat catfish. They like it the meat to be reddish. Others like it to be yellow. So that's a bit knowing the market requirement and adjusting the feed quality to that. Testing the taste of the feed is relatively easy because you can see on the feed response how good the animal is eating. If they like the product or not, that's relatively easy to see. And African catfish can be a bit tricky, but I would say it's not the most tricky fish you can find. Other fish are more difficult to satisfy with different feed taste. But African catfish also have, in terms of digestibility, some raw materials it absolutely doesn't like. That's a bit surprising because normally it's a very robust fish, compared to rainbow trout, even a robust fish compared to tilapia. But we think that due to its special digestive system with a very small stomach and a relatively long gut, and these fast growth rates, it simply needs nutrients that are easy digestible and cannot, like a trout, eat all kind of raw materials. Trout is a very robust fish when it comes to digestion. In terms of water quality, it is of course much less robust than the African catfish, which can also inhale air from the water surface. But some raw materials are simply not good for African catfish, and that's what we have found in many digestibility trials we have carried out with that animal, so that we know what is working in African catfish, where are the limits for certain raw materials, and what is acceptable for the fish to grow very good. Something special with African catfish is, I think, the feces structure, because there's no structure at all. If we do trials, for example, with tilapia or with rainbow trout, the feces are like small sausages, yeah? It's also relatively easy to extract it from the water column and to analyze it. African catfish doesn't do that. African catfish is not creating these little feces structures. It's more slurry that comes out of it. Therefore, collecting that is a bit more tricky. It's not that easy, but it's possible to do that. One has to be very dedicated to find out and then find out the real digestibility values. But I just wanted to mention it's not that easy with African catfish. So with a little bit of practice, one can also do good digestibility trials. So you have a raw material in the feed, different proportions. This is, for example, corn gluten. This is bacterial protein. This is fish meal. That is hemoglobin. And we check one by one, what is the digestibility of the nutrients, how much of the protein inside this raw material here, when eaten by a fish, stays inside the fish, and how much is excreted and is found in the feces afterward. Looking into growth, that's always fun, doing growth trials with catfish. Interesting, these two are of the same age. So I think you on a professional farm, you will sort these losers out here because they are not growing well enough. And then you can't help them anymore. Makes no sense to keep them in the tank, but it's just to show the potential you might have some that are growing very poorly and others that are growing excellent in the same amount of time. With a grower feed here, typical feed conversions that can be achieved 0.87, 0.82. That's a normal feed conversion achievable with a grower feed of 3 millimeter, for example. And then looking into the meat quality, what can be used as fillet, 43% roundabout. Then they can have different, depending on the feed coloration, they can also have different structure of the meat quality. Can be more reddish, can also be white. It depends on what is inside the feed. Then the health. As I said, it's a very robust fish, but on a very high stocking densities, what is important to look for is the mucus layer outside the fish, because that's like a protection shield. You can also enhance it with certain raw materials to have a thicker mucus layer outside the fish that makes the fish eventually stronger against environmental conditions. That's very important. You will also find thick mucus layers on the gills of the fish, which also allow the fish to be stronger and more robust. Another thing important is that the anus of the fish needs to be without inflammation, so you're not having something called enteritis. That's an inflammation of the hindgut of the fish, which is then typically an entrance point for bacteria. But with the right raw materials, you won't find that. And therefore, that's something we look after when formulating feed for African catfish. Again, health, the digestive tract, I mentioned that earlier. It is a relatively sensitive digestive tract. As long as the feed is okay, one will not notice it. But if some raw materials are used in too high proportions, that can create very quick problems that the fish is simply not able to absorb it at all, and therefore suffer greatly and even have quick mortalities are then possible. Inside the gut of the fish, you find these structures here called microvilli. And depending on how good in shape they are like the ones with a huge surface where nutrients are absorbed and also where nutrients are carried through the gut. So you have the gut of the fish. I can also go back one more. The gut of the fish is full of these so-called microvilli to increase the surface of it. And of course, they need to be in shape as well, because the more they are in shape, the better the mucus layer around it, the better is the absorption surface. Bigger surface, bigger absorption, bigger growth. So simple it is. And then we are checking here, taking samples of the gut, putting it under the microscope, and observing how good is the gut of the fish developed when using different diets, different raw materials inside the feed. Last but not least, the quality of the animal. What is, for example, the water holding capacity when we make minced meat, and one can measure it relatively easy. What is the taste of the fish? The taste of the fish when having different raw materials, in particular, the oil content of the feed has a noticeable effect on the quality, on the meat quality, and on the taste of the fat inside the fish. So this is checked by a panel of people. They receive small portions of African catfish, or could be rainbow trout or tilapia, depending on what we are checking. So they receive small portions into this little chamber with a chair. Then they turn down this lid again, or this little door. Then they eat it, and then they write up their observations. How did it taste? Was it sweet? Was it sour? Was it umami taste? And to have a differentiation between different raw materials and how they affect the meat quality of the fish and eventually the taste. For us, it's then important to know what the taste should be, by the way. So if there's some demands, for example, it should be very fishy, it should not be fishy at all. Some people don't like fishy taste, others love it. That's something we then need to accustom to with our recipes. No. So, and then putting all together, done all the trials here with African catfish, checked all that, and grown them from fingerling size or smaller size up to marketable sized fish. All these findings after half-year study. Where do they end up? Of course, they go into the feed. So what can be found then? For example, in these small pellets here of Futura, we find a feed conversion ratio of 0.64, a specific growth rate of 10%, 10.7% per day. I mean, that's amazing that an animal can grow so fast. And a daily feed intake of 6.89%. So that's when all the information are put together into one basket, so to say, and eventually then the feed is made from all the tricks and knowledge and experience by findings from the lab and knowledge from the factory, from people working there for many years. That sums up what I've mentioned before, having all these different ideas here, how the feed should be composed, what triggers a good quality of the product, and in the end, also keep working on it and obtaining knowledge also for future recipes and future applications. I mean, you could just say we stop here and use what we know, but we need to carry on, continue testing, continue trial work in our trial lab or also on fish farms in Nigeria to find out what can we do better next time, how can we improve our product. There's always something to develop. So, and that knowledge, as mentioned before, goes into these different products here to make the fish happy, to supply you with good products, giving you a very nice growth of the fish, also in an economical way. And then a last clip from African catfish. No.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Anna.
Yep. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anna. Yeah. Really appreciate that in-depth presentation that covers all the meticulous production process of the Aqua fish feed. At least with this, we are very confident that our farmers are able to see the process of how the feed comes about. Thank you very much. Yeah, in continuation of your session, we are going to have Mr. Larry Ogushina to speak more on the daily management routine for newly hatched fries and the broodstock selection. Mr. Larry Ogushina, please, can you just give a few minutes on those two topics? Thank you. I think we lost Mr. Larry Ogushina due to internet network. I think, okay, he's back. Mr. Larry Ogushina, can you please unmute? Yeah.
Yeah, so good to be here.
Yeah, please, I would like you to speak about the daily management routine of newly hatched fries and broodstock selection so that we can add it up to the in-depth analysis from the feed production angle. So you have like 5 to 10 minutes to do justice to that, please. Thank you very much.
I like the yes. I like the whole thing to self-activate my opinion also. It's not Hello?
Hello, we can hear
me?
you.
But I don't think the video is on. Is my video on, please?
Hello, Mr.
Yes.
Larry.
You'll have to activate my video. Yes.
Hello, Mr. Larry.
I think my video is on now.
Hello, Mr. Larry. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Larry, can you hear me? Hello? Please, Mr. Larry, I think we'll come back to these two topics when we get to the question and answer session. So I can take it along with that on that premise. So maybe we bring on Folusho Dada to speak about the business itself, which is what we call the costing and the analysis for production, production feasibility using the Aqua Hatchery packs. We've listened to the in-depth technical analysis of the feed production. I think we should now be going to the business part of it, which Mr. Folusho Dada will take us through. So, Mr. Folusho Dada, please, can you start your session now?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I want to say a big thank you again to Dr. Ano. He has done good justice to the importance of paying particular attention to the fry feed or the feed as at from the production end. And he also shared a lot of the thought that has gone into the feed that you carry when you go to your farm, when you buy Aqua and take to your farm to use. Even through the chat, a lot of people have been asking, so where is the money part of the entire conversation? And I think that's where I'm coming in. I'm going to share my screen now to briefly show the Naira and Kobo of our discussion so far. So what I have before me right now is a simple chart that shows the feasibility, for example, of a breeder or a hatcher who has decided to breed some fries and sell to the market. So I'm going to share a little analysis of this. This is for someone who, for example, is looking to achieve 70,000 fingerlings at the end of his production. We are basing our assumption on the fact that the person is hatching about 100,000 fries and is aiming at 70% survival rate, which means that he's going to be ending his production process with 70,000 fingerlings at 5 grams. Now, if at 5 grams, if at an average of 5 grams, what that means is that that breeder is coming out of his production cycle with 350 kg of fish, of fingerlings to sell to the market. Now, if we look at the charts, we have made a breakdown of the quantity of feed that should be used for each size of the hatchery pack, right from the 0.1 up until the 1.3. I would like us to pay particular attention to the feed demand per day and the estimated number of days for which that quantity will be fed. If we take a look at those two columns, we will realize that Aqua is saying that at the end of 71 days, we would have been able to complete our cycle of production. And it would have taken us about roughly to say 36 buckets of hatchery packs for you to arrive at 70,000 fingerlings at 70% survival rate. So if we come to the Naira and Kobo of it, at our current prices, when we go to the store to get our feeds, you would have spent about 461,650 Naira to buy those quantity of buckets to raise those quantity of fish. We have done the breakdown per kg, but I know we can always reach out to our field officers to find out exactly what it will cost per bucket of feed. If this is true, it will mean that at the end of that production time, the farmer has spent about 1,319 naira per kg of fish for which he would have produced. Remember that the farmer is coming out with 350 kg of fingerlings at 5 grams each. So another assumption, let's assume that our overhead cost to do so is about 500,000, which involves the cost of the brood stock, the cost of maintaining a flow-through system for that number of days, the cost of paying your workers, paying yourself, operational expenses and all of that. At the end of that analysis, at the end of those 71 days, the farmer would have spent about 961,615 naira to do that. Break down that into the cost of each fingerling. Remember that this is with the assumption that the farmer is coming out with 70% survivor, which would mean that the farmer would have spent about 13 naira 74 kobo per fingerling. Modestly put, if we are selling off, say at the current rate with which we sell 5 grams fingerlings today, say 25 naira each, that farmer will be selling off his stock at about 1.75 million naira. Take away all the cost and all of that. At the first circle of profit, the farmer should have about 788,000 naira as profit for that 71-day circle of fingerling production. And we in Aqua continue to admonish farmers to run production circles continuously in a year, so that you can, when you do your business analysis for a year, you can say, this is what I've put in and this is what I'm coming out at the end of the year. If that is so, it will mean that a farmer can do 4 circles. Let's even assume 90 days, give or take the resting phase of your farm. The farmer can do 4 circles of 90 days each within a year. And in cumulation, using Aqua to grow his fries to fingerling, he will be able to achieve about 3.15 million naira as profit for that year. If we look at it over the initial cost of investment, which he has recycled 4 times, he would have made about 180% of that amount, of the amount he has put in to do that business at the end of 1 year. I will stop here. I know that questions may arise as to 1 or 2 things. We'll pick that up at the end of the session. Thank you.
Sorry? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Floshodada, for that in-depth presentation. Like I always tell people, the most profitable part of aquaculture is the fingerling production. If it's done well, from the broodstock to quality feed, you can get better returns on investment than in the growth section. And that is what you have shown now from your analysis. So we have seen the naira and kobo of it from the technical perspective of Dr. Arno. So for hatchery operators, you're able to see the 2 dynamics play out, how the quality feeds are being used to get quality products and very good prices. So we now dip into the frequently asked questions and audience comments. But before we go into that, I would like Mr. Lanre to try and do justice to the 2 topics earlier discussed, which is the daily management routines of newly hatched fries and broodstock selection. Because broodstock selection is one of the key factors in trying to get good hatchlings in terms of disease resistance, growth rates, because the parent determines the offspring. So I wouldn't want to talk much on that. I will have to hand over to the expert who has a long number of years experience on the hatchery operation. So, Mr. Larry, please, can you just go into those two topics before you go into the question and answer and the frequently asked questions? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Chiamiyu. First and foremost, I would like to say that I really appreciate being here. Catfish farming is a passion for me, and I believe there are quite a number of people like that share such passion with me. And I also like to commend, Aqua, Nigeria, for this wonderful opportunity. Now, straight to business of the day, talking about breeding, management, and quite things like that. People that have actually sent in their hands, I've actually taken at the right peak, on the ones that I strongly believe, I will definitely learn from. Now, with respect to one of the critical things I always like to encourage our farmers to do is this: have your own broodstock bank. When you have your own broodstock bank, then you can actually know the status of the broodstock. There's a particular question that came from one of our people, and that person actually asked, question mainly along, broodstock quality. And you see, a critical thing to do and to put in effect is you must have your own broodstock bank. No matter the quantity, maybe 20, maybe 30, have your own broodstock bank. When you have your own broodstock bank, then the status of your broodstock will be definitely known to you. You will know how they are feeding, and you will know how they are faring on daily basis. And with respect to how they are feeding, feed that you give to broodstock is extremely important. And one of the things I always like to stress is when you want to do breeding, 6 weeks before breeding, 6 weeks, 8 weeks before breeding, make sure you give your broodstock the best of the best attention and the best of the best feeding. And you see, talking from experience now and what normally plays out with breeding, there are quite a number of our people that actually want to breed and they select females, 3, 4, 5, 6 females. And when they actually press the eggs, when they strip them, they bring all the eggs together. I want to emphasize that this might not be a very wonderful practice. When you have your hatchery, it might be 1,000 liters, it might be 2,000 liters. You spread your eggs from individual female inside individual hatchery compartment, rather than mixing all the eggs together. Another particular question that actually came from one of our people, I think in Lagos, that person actually asked concerning broodstock feed. I am quite certain that Aqua is into broodstock feed manufacturing, but it depends on the quantity. It depends on the quantity that you want now. If you want, reasonable quantity, if you get across to Aqua will be able to put you through with respect to how to get that and what to do about that. Now, with respect to daily routine. Now, as a farmer, if you have maybe like 1,000 liters incubating system, I would genuinely want to encourage you to have at least minimum of like 15,000 liters of water, as your water budget on daily basis. And this is if you are actually using the flow-through system. You see, for most of our hatcheries, you can use the flow-through system or you can use the recirculating, system. Now, I will encourage you use both when you because when you recycle your water, it will give you the opportunity to manage the temperature and the water quality parameters. But you see, when you flow through, when you bring in water on daily basis, not only do you dilute, as you are diluting, you are making the water condition, the water chemistry to be very, very good for the fishes. So I really encourage this. If you don't have enough water, to play with on daily basis, please, as you are recycling, bring in enough fresh water, at least not less than maybe 70 to 80% of what of the capacity of your incubating system. And also with respect to sorting, if you use eggs, if you spread eggs for just an individual female, the level of sorting you'll need to do, in the cycle of the growth of those fry might not be so much significant because you have not mixed them together. But by the time you actually mix eggs from different females, that is when there will be problems.
Hello, Mr. Larry. Can you? Hello.
Yes. Hello, yes.
Hello, Mr. Lane. Can you please take your mouthpiece to your mouth nearer, the mouthpiece to your mouth nearer, please?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better.
Okay, it's a lot better.
Now. The audio is better, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now let me quickly go back to broodstock selection and daily management. Now you see quite a number of our people actually want to know about the management. And I believe this is critical because actually from the first question, from one of the people that actually sent in the first question, you see this particular person wants to know that, and the question is, I had successfully, but after 3 weeks, everything dies. And these are actually, happened repeatedly. From quite a number of questions that have actually come in, this is a common thing. And you see 10, some wrote and they said 10 days into the session. Some said 3 weeks, which is 21 days into the session. And you see, let me link this to broodstock selection and broodstock quality and broodstock management. This is critical because you see, when they actually die, there are three things that actually can be, can be responsible for that. The first thing is the broodstock quality. The second one is the feed, and the third one is the water. I always say that no fish or no fry wants to die. It's a function of the feed and the water. If your feed is very, very good, and of course, I always like to recommend Aqua. Aqua is tested, Aqua is trusted. Once you use Aqua, the right quantity, the right way, sincerely, you should not have problem. Now, with respect to the broodstock quality is extremely important. There's some people that when they want to actually do breeding, they don't feed the broodstock, they don't feed them very well. There's no magical way out to that. When you don't give the right quantity of feed, when you don't give the right quality of feed to your broodstock, it is garbage in, garbage out. There's nothing you can do about that. So I will encourage you to actually use good feed. When you feed very well 6 weeks before the breeding session, I can guarantee you the process will be smooth, everything will be perfect. And with respect to the water, please make sure that you use on daily basis fresh, top quality, optimal water. When your water quantity is good and the water quality, especially the pH, your pH is between 6.5 to 7.5, sincerely, you are good. You are good. And of course, you should check the temperature. You see, we're in the tropics, and there are quite a number of our breeders that actually don't manage the temperature very well. When you don't manage your water temperature very well, then of course the fries, they will definitely die also. So three weeks into the session and they start coming down, the first culprit will be your broodstock. If your broodstock is of good quality, sincerely, those fishes should not die. Secondly, if your water quality is at premium level, the fry really should not die. And of course, if you use the right feed, and of course, right now, just like I encourage, if you right quantity, at the same people that have similar problems to definitely handle. It's a particular question that comes and the person says that I use concrete tanks and my pH rises on daily basis. How do I counter this? Please engage a water chemistry expert. You see, the dynamics of water that we use for breeding, that we use to raise our fish on daily basis, they keep on changing. And at the same time, I'll encourage you to have water test kits, please. Try and monitor the water parameters at least on daily basis, if not twice daily. Even 3 times is not too much. Take your the dissolved oxygen of your water, check the temperature, check the ammonia level, and things like that. For the dissolved oxygen level, it should not be less than 4 milligrams per liter. This is extremely important. For the nitrite, for the ammonia, as much as possible, bring them to the nearest minimum, 0. Of course, for temperature 26 to 32 degrees, Celsius is wonderful. And you see, if you maintain this, I strongly believe that using concrete tanks should not be any problem. Now, another critical question that I can see that our people are actually concerned about is there's a particular question, and this person wants to know that what are the factors that are responsible to work on, with respect to the water, so that he or she could achieve 95% attributability. This is critical and this is important. You see, for every gram of catfish egg, we have at least, let's say, 700 eggs for every gram. If you use like maybe 100 grams, if you want to hatch maybe like 100 grams, that means we are looking at about 70,000 eggs. Now, depending on the kind of system you are operating, let us say that you have actually done the selection very well. You have used the right amount of hormone, and you have actually used the best and the very good way, even just reasonably good hatchery system. Let's say you are expecting, let's just put it at 35 at 50%, maybe 35,000. Now you see, from that level of hatching to the next level of winning, let's put it to between 40 to 85%. So you are looking at maybe like about maybe 28,000 to maybe like about 56,000. Now to the next level, 3 weeks to 6 weeks later, to the next level, if you still put that to maybe the next survival, maybe if you put it to maybe about maybe 80%, you should still get close to 50,000. Now from that level to the level of maybe juveniles, I would like to say that you should still be able to record maybe like about between 40 to 50,000, depending on your management skill and the kind of system you have put in place. Now, breeding is dynamic, and there is nothing wrong with learning from others, trying to ask questions, and quite a number of things like that. And that I strongly believe is what Aqua is doing at this time. So for you to actually expect maybe like 95% hatching, it's a function of the experience and the function of the system, and especially the function of the feed you use. If you use Aqua, hatchery packs, sincerely, if you use it the right way, there really should not be so much problem, and you attaining close to that 95% over time should be what you should be able to achieve. Now, there's this interesting question. The person says, when it is said, when it is said that feed with a little pinch of hand, what quantity is a pinch of hand? And he or she continues and says that, you know, especially when I have thousands of fry being hatched. Please let me quickly drop this. It's a lot better for you to slightly underfeed than to slightly overfeed. Even if your feed is made from moon or made from mass, when you overfeed, you will have problem. But when you underfeed sincerely, results will be better. And let me explain. You see, when the fishes, when they eat, right from the fry stage, a reasonable quantity of what is ingested into their system, and that's one of the things that Dr. Ano emphasized upon, a reasonable quantity of what is ingested into the system of the fish is water, right from the hatchery stage. As they are eating, they are also drinking. If the quantity of water to be ingested is not good, the fishes will not be able to drink. When they don't drink, there will be no digestion. And that was critical things that actually Dr. Ano actually spoke about. When there is no proper hydrolysis, he kept on talking about hydrolysis of the feed. When hydrolysis is a function also of the ingested water, when the water is not good, even if the fishes eat, the feed will not get digested. And once the feed does not get digested, it's a matter of time the fry will drop. And once the fry drop, sincerely, it's not the fault of the feed. So for you to actually talk about the pinch, please just put it at the back of your mind that if you slightly underfeed, it's a lot better than to slightly overfeed. And you see, because of the fry stage that we're talking about, the stomach cavity, is relatively very small. So please underfeed than you overfeed. Now, another question I'd quickly like to take us through is, my fry usually drop dead, 70% of them after 10 days, hatching. And my broodstock are all above a year, and my water pH is 3.9. That is not a good water pH. And like I said earlier, please, if you need to actually, engage, the services of good water chemistry experts, please do so. There are quite a number of them that we have in our industry. And sincerely, if you get across to Mr. Folusho that it will help along this line. It will definitely link you up, even if he needs to visit your system, and put you through. This is what Aqua does, and Aqua does it fantastically well. So you can see this question is actually really, it is similar to the question. This person is saying 10 days. People have said 15 days, some have said 21 days. It's the same thing. Please monitor your pH, monitor your temperature, monitor all the water quality parameters that you have. If you do this sincerely, you will not have problem. And the person further, goes ahead and he says that despite the precautions that I've taken, especially when I siphon frequently, you know, the mere fact that you have to siphon frequently, I might want to suggest that you are overfeeding and your water management is not at premium level. There are farmers that, you see, if you use the right feed, even if you slightly overfeed, there's a way you can flush, there's a way you can flush the debris, and the uneaten feed, and some of the waste particles out of your system. If your system is well constructed. And if you do this, then of course, constant siphoning might really need to be reduced because when you siphon, part of the fry will come out, you have to put them back. You are directly or indirectly stressing them. So please, when you slightly underfeed, I want to believe this is the next question says that one can be done of the feed you use. You see, not by quite trust. For quite a number of farmers that actually want to start off with Hale Aqua, and for quite a number of people that have actually started with Hale Aqua, the reports have always been that start off with Hale Aqua. I can guarantee you, you always want to continue with Hale Aqua. But even if you don't want to continue with Hale Aqua, please start off with Hale Aqua. If you do that sincerely, there will not be massive dropping. Like your fries are dropping. It pains me to the marrow when you have selected the broodstock very well, when your water chemistry is perfect, and 10 days into the session, you have your fry dropping. Sincerely, something is wrong. Because if the water is not good, the fry will not hatch. Once the fry hatch, then please put a finger on the water, put a finger on the feed. When you can ensure that your water is good, please put a finger on your feed. When the feed is bad, the fry will drop. And once the fry drops, sincerely, it is not a good thing for the farmer. Now, there's also this question of, the use of probiotics in hatchery. Probiotics are fantastic, microorganisms. They are the good bacteria that some of the farmers use. I would like to quickly add to that. If we know how to use it, because this question is, comes with a caveat that the probiotics, once it is being used, then the water should not be changed. I will not subscribe to this. Even if you use probiotics for the hatchery system, please make sure that you manage your water. Make sure you manage your water critically. Make sure you change your water as frequently as possible. Be lavish with usage of water in the hatchery. And that's why I said earlier that even if your incubating system is like about 1,000 liters, be ready to use not less than, at least to have somewhere stored at least 10 to 15,000 liters of water. This will put you on a very good pedestal, and there will be no need for you to start panicking when some things happen. Now, this next question says that how can one know that the source of the broodstock is good? It might be very difficult for you to know since the broodstocks are not from you, except you have a trusted farmer not too far from you that you consult with. And if the farmer is truthful, then you can be sure. But to avoid all that, please have your own broodstock bank. Keep your own broodstock. You know, not only will they be handy when you want to use them, there have been quite a number of failures that we had. People have farmers. After stripping the fish, the females, they now need to collect the males from the males, and lo and behold, the males is not even good. For some males, no even males at all. Now, at that point, it is difficult for you to now run and get another male. So that is why it's good for you to have your own broodstock bank. When you have your own broodstock bank, there's always broodstock for you to fall back on. Now, for the broodstock feed, I've said it earlier. Please make sure you use good feed. And for these, if the quantity requested for is reasonable enough, and I believe Haleakwa might be able to do something about this, because you see, the quality of the egg is a function of the status of the fishes, and also of course of the meals also. When the broodstock, when they are not kept at optimum condition, there's no magic to it. The eggs will not be good, the meals will not be good. And for farmers that have actually had, empty meal sacks, this is one of the reasons why your meal sacks are empty. Now, somebody asked with regards to what medicine can I give to my fry after hatching? For me, the best medicine is to feed. Sincerely, extensively, Dr. Ando spoke along the lines of additives in the Hale Aqua feed, vitamins and minerals. The best medicine is the feed. When you use the right kind of feed and you give them top quality, premium water on daily basis, your fry will not come down with infections. And once they don't come down with infections, there'll be no need for you to use any kind of drugs at all. Now, for this session, I'll quickly like to round up this session by taking this particular question. This question, I think, actually came in from Mrs. maybe Mrs. or Miss Stella Obima. In the course of this webinar, the question came in, and she actually asked that she actually uses public water, for a hatchery system. And she realized that after some time, the fry, they also come down and they die. Please, ma, it is never advisable for you to use public water, public because of pollution and a lot of other things that you cannot, be sure of that will happen upstream. So even if the pH of that water is 7, overnight anything could have happened. There could be somebody that actually does fufu or lafu or does anything. There could be people doing things upstream, and they can release a lot of pollutants even into your water. You will never know. And once you just bring that water into your facility, of course the fry will drop. At this particular junction, I would just like to quickly, stop here. We'll encourage as many more questions to still come on board. That is what Hale Aqua does well. Please bring in your questions, send in your questions. You can still send them in even in the course of this webinar, and we would definitely love to do justice to your questions. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Larry. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I would like to take a few questions based on what I saw on the comment section. Somebody is asking for how to avoid inbreeding. Mr. Larry, can you hear me? Mr. Larry, please unmute yourself. Hello, Mr. Larry, can you hear me?
Yes. You see, with respect, yes. Yes, I can hear you perfectly well. You see, to hinder the function of your breed, as much as possible, related, much as possible. Now, we'll encourage our breeders to learn to collaborate. So when you collaborate and you have broodstock that are not related, there really be not so much issue of inbreeding. So inbreeding is a function. You see, the best way to look at it is you just thinking about a son having intercourse with the mother. It is not ideal, because when a female gives birth to offspring, and after a particular time, you check for the good growers, for the fast growers, and you select them and you keep them, right? And maybe another circular, you do the same thing. You see, fishes of that stock, they are related. Over time, you will have inbreeding, because you are crossing males and females from the same parents or from the same grandparents. It is not ideal, and I really don't encourage that. So please, as much as possible, try and get, especially for the males, try and get males from other sources. Keep them. You can keep them together. You can keep them together. You can keep the male and the female together. I encourage that, even inside the same pond. You see, there's a way the male will, will romantically agitate the females just to make them ready. But as much as possible, they should not be related. Once they are related, there will always be inbreeding. But if they are not really related, there will not be inbreeding. And at the same time, another critical thing, because this one is equally connected to this, another critical thing is the age. There's some people, they will just say that 8 months, my broodstock, the males, they are 8 months and they have eggs. Fine, they will have eggs if you are using a good feed like Hale Aqua, but they are not matured. I encourage at least the maturity profile for the broodstock to at least not be less than 18 months. Once they are not less than 18 months, of course, what you get will be good. I will be perfect in just possible. So please, because that one's equally bad, and I've actually seen a similar that. Make sure that time make sure
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Larry. I think you need to talk more about the issue of this public. Hello, Mr. Larry. You need to talk more about the issue of this public water use that one of the participants spoke about. I think you need to talk about the chlorine issue in public water treatment that may affect hatching, apart from the fact that, okay, when you talk of public water supply, I don't think she's talking about water from the river or from the streams. I think the pipe-borne water that some farmers use on their farm, which is being treated by the water works using chlorine. I think you need to talk more about that for her. I think that is what she's trying to talk about. So
yes.
please just go ahead and speak to that issue.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Tamiyu. You see, I just link a lot of the questions together. And you see, talking about chlorine, please, as much as possible, if you need to use public water, I always encourage that you have, a storage for the public water. When you have the storage for the public water, if the water is from the municipal source, of course, we assume that the pH will be good, the water will be devoid of all pollutants, it will be devoid of all kind of pollution, but the water at some interval might be high in chlorine. Now, if the only water you can use is from the municipal source, please ensure that you actually store this water. When you store this water, aerate the water. When you aerate the water, the chlorine definitely will evaporate. And once the chlorine evaporates, you can actually use the water. And at the same time, another thing you can do is to age up your water before you push into the hatchery. Once you age up your water, one way or the other, the water becomes very good for you to use. So, Mrs. Stella, because I strongly believe that this is for you. Please, if you need to use municipal water, if you need to use public water, and it is actually you are not sure, and you actually have to test for chlorine, please make sure you don't use water that has chlorine at all. If you need to use it, aerate the water effectively well. Let the water age for days, even if for weeks. And if you're going to use for days, if you're going to age the water for days, please make sure you have storage facility. When the water comes from the municipal source, it goes into your maybe underground storage or overhead storage. You keep them for some days. Then by the time you actually age the water up, enrich the water effectively well before you push the water into your hatchery. When you do this, of course, the water will be devoid of chlorine and you can actually use effectively well. Thank you very much. And please, I would also like to quickly drop at this point that if you still have questions or if your questions have not been, attended to, please let them keep on coming. Even after this session, we are together with Highly Aqua, we are family. Please let this question keep coming in. We will definitely do justice to your question. That's the essence of the webinar anyway. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Larry, for that. There are two questions on the platform. One has to do with somebody asking how many times can one use the female broodstock? Then another one is talking about the temperature in the incubating system. I think just take these two while I compile some other questions. Thank you.
Yes, please. Yes. You see, for the temperature system, please ensure that the temperature of your hatchery is between 28 to 32, 28 degrees Celsius to 32. If you can maintain this, you are good to go. Don't let it go below that. If it goes below that, activity, digestion of feed will not be at optimum. And the other question, please, what's the other question again? Temperature and what?
Yeah, how many times?
The number of times. Yes, the number of times.
Yeah, number that can use the female broodstock.
Yes, number of times. Yes. When you use the broodstock now, you can reuse that broodstock 6 weeks later, and you see, it's just like wine. It's like wine. The older, the better. But of course, there's also a caveat, you know, when your broodstock, when they get to maybe like 3 years, 3.5 years, getting close to 4 years, please, replace them. In fact, don't let them get to 4 years. Replace them. And the best way to understand this is, it's a lot easy because if we relate it to, to the human race, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier. It's a lot better, for a lady that's maybe between 25, 26, 27 years to get pregnant and to be okay, to be able to carry the pregnancy to terms than maybe a woman of maybe 60, 65, 70. So once they're getting too old, please discard them, but please, 18 months should be the minimum. But in terms of use, if you use it now, give them good days later, really well again, right? 6 weeks later of good feeding, optimal care, they are good to go again. You can reuse them, and this is where tagging also comes into place. If you use a particular female now, if you have facilities to tag, you tag so that you can know, how the fry have actually performed, because you see some females just like in piggery, they are not fantastic mothers. Some will not give you good fry. Once the female doesn't give you good fry, there's a way you can, or no meals, but how do you have?
Yeah, Mr. Larry, thank you very much. I would like to, Dr. Arno, please, I would like to talk about this issue, a question being brought forward now. Somebody is asking what makes a good broodstock feed? Maybe you can talk to us about that. Someone from Edo State, Nigeria, is asking what makes a good broodstock feed. Thank you.
Yeah, a good broodstock feed. The female fish, they transfer nutrients from their body into the eggs. Yeah? And for example, nutrients that are transferred or substances that are transferred are oils, fat, highly unsaturated fatty acids, omega-3 fatty acids, for example, vitamin C, calcium is very important, and phospholipids. If the broodstock feed does not provide those nutrients in a high level, the female fish will, independently of that, also transfer whatever omega-3 fatty acids are available, whatever vitamin C is available inside the animal body, it will transfer it into the eggs. So that happens automatically. So the mother, so to say, gives all what it can into the eggs before the spawning. On the side of the father fish, calcium is very important for a good sperm motility, so that it can move through the water. I know you anyway do a lot of artificial fertilization by collecting sperm and eggs, but then it's also important that this sperm is motile and moving very quickly through the eggs and finding the entrance point very quickly. And that also improves the fertilization rate. So when there's enough calcium inside the sperm, because that's what they need for movement. A good broodstock feed can improve that. I would as I said, the parental fish, they are anyway giving all they can, all what is available from their body that is required by the eggs. They will transfer it from their body into the eggs. But if you have additional vitamin C inside the broodstock feed, if you have additional levels of omega-3 fatty acids inside the broodstock feed, the eggs will be more, the eggs will also be bigger, and the fry originating or hatching from the eggs will also be bigger and stronger. So you can amplify the quality of the fish fry by giving the broodstock fish a special nutrition, high in vitamins, high in omega-3 fatty acids. And by that, you have a fish fry eventually, which is bigger and stronger, and as a consequence, growing faster. Therefore, you save time and you reduce also mortality. That was my input.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anna. Thank you very much for that perspective. We are coming to the end of this webinar. We have 10 minutes to go. Maybe we'll take just one question or two questions. But I would like Mr. Folushodada to speak to the audience in terms of getting questions answered after this webinar, the channels to go through for us to get back on the very many unanswered questions. Mr. Folushodada, please, can you come on board and let participants know where to put their questions and where we can get answers to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. I'm also going through the comments, the chat, and both the questions, and I see that there's a lot. I want to thank everybody for taking time to engage us beyond even what we have expected for a first edition. However, we have a lot of WhatsApp groups that has been created and managed based on the different locations where we have field officers who can easily attend to whatever issues are raised there. I had put out a number before, but I'll put out the number again on the chat platform so that you can just send a message to that number. When you send a message to that number, we'll be able to, a message of your name, number, and location. We'll be able to identify the WhatsApp group or WhatsApp community to which we will put you in. Also, a way to get your questions to us and to get speedy answers is for you to follow us on Facebook. Our Facebook page is Aqua Nigeria. I'm going to type that again on the chat box. Please just look for us on Facebook. Once you follow us, you can send us direct messages. You can comment. We share tips and posts every day. You can comment on those. You can send us direct messages if you have personal issues with your farm that you need, or you have questions that you need us to answer you privately on. What we have is we have a lot of field officers in different parts of the country. And so when we know your location and the type of challenge you have, we would know we will know what resource to dedicate to resolving those challenges for you. So I'll send those messages on the chat box now. The number where you can send your name, location, and WhatsApp number on, so that we can add you to the WhatsApp community, and our Facebook page so that you can like and follow us, and then from there send messages to us directly through the DM. Thank you.
I just want the MD Aqua Nigeria Limited to just give a closing remarks before we now finally end this beautiful session. Mr. Nuruddin Latif, please come on board.
Thank you very much once again, everyone, for taking time to be here with us for our first edition of the webinar. And I hope that we've been able to have one or two points that we can use to improve our farming business. As we said earlier, we look forward to having the physical seminar next year, 2022. Hopefully that the pandemic will have gone away, and also we'll be able to interact one-on-one. And But before then, we'll keep engaging you. We know it's very tough now doing fish farming business in Nigeria, but we'll keep ensuring that our product is giving you maximum utilization for every cost that you're spending. And we'll do our best as Aqua to see how we can keep engaging all the stakeholders in the industry to make sure that fish farmers are not being ripped away, because we have to move with the trend. We know that prices of all commodities in other sectors have gone up in proportion to the rate of cost of the inputs. But in our own sector, we know the reverse is the case. But we'll keep engaging, the stakeholders in the industry, and also creating platforms that fish farmers will be able to sell their fish profitably. And this is part of what we've been able to unveil today, giving you the cost template for you to actually know if you are producing your fingerlings at a profitable level. We'll keep doing this, and we hope that you keep supporting us with your patronage too. We believe that it is when you farmers are having quality harvest that we, the millers, will remain in business. We appreciate you, and we look forward to having you again next time. Thank you very much all.
Thank you, Mr. Olasisi. So I would like to thank all the panelists, Dr. Ano, Mr. Olarewaju Ushina, Folusho Dada. Thanks a lot for this session. And I would especially like to thank all the participants that took their time out to come to this first webinar of Aqua Nigeria Limited. We thank you so much for your feedbacks, for your presence, for your participation. We hope to do it next time physically. Thank you very much. God bless. Bye for now.
New products are marketed, or new raw materials are added to Aqua's raw materials.
Aqua creates feed for over 30 different fish species, which all have specific nutritional requirements. From a veterinarian point of view, it's very important to deliver a healthy fish with a good quality fillet, high performance, which means fast growth, and even more important, a minimum impact on the environment.
Hello, I'm Anya. Together with my husband, we grow carp and trout in our fish farm to be served then fresh in our restaurant. I buy feed from Aqua because it gives me great results. The feeds are really tailored to my fish. That's why I'm sure that the customers in my restaurant get the highest ever quality fish.
The fish, and especially the fish oil, contains higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids, which has been proven to be extremely important for the human health. Omega-3 content in the diet is preventing obesity and related conditions, including including type 2 diabetes. And it's even improving children's brain development and maintaining good mental health. Aquaculture is a sustainable way of producing protein-rich food by using less natural resources than traditional meat production.
We are very proud to be a part of the growing aquaculture in the world. It gives me a great pleasure to know that my son has continued the family values in the business.
It's a great honor for me to be the fourth generation in our family-owned business. Aquaculture has always been a big part of my life, and I'm very excited personally to be a part of a sector that has a huge positive impact on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We will continue to support the global growth in aquaculture. Fish farming is a straightforward way to improve living conditions for populations around the world. This is done by enabling them to start and to grow their own businesses. Our vision for a better future within aquaculture is for more fish farmers to use modern fishery with all the benefits it provides for people, for the animals, and for the nature that we all share. That's why we say, let's grow together.